Now, Donald Trump isn't exactly the foremost expert on climate change. Now, on the campaign trail, he said he would, he said that climate change, hey, it's a hoax. It's created by the Chinese. The Chinese
Believe
people.
me.
Believe me. Believe
I know
me.
more than the scientists.
I do.
Believe me.
I have
And
the best science.
I've got brain. I've got brain. My brain is great. It's tremendous. So yeah, he's out there. He's saying climate change not real, created by the Chinese. However, in private, there's a little bit of a difference going on. See, he's been meeting with climate change activists. For example, he's met with former Vice President Al Gore, which should make people's heads explode, as well as Leonardo DiCaprio, who's of course an actor and an activist. Now, not only that, but Ivanka Trump is expected to play a very large role in the administration, and has said she plans to make climate change one of her signature issues. Interesting. So, look, it may sound like good news, but remember, he also has some pretty bad picks. Now, Trump's promised to not only increase the use of fossil fuels and decrease funding for renewable energy, but he also picked a lot of people who are anti-climate science. You have, for example, Oklahoma Attorney General Scott Pruitt, who will be heading the EPA. This is a guy who's famous for suing the EPA. Now, he's also a climate denier. He also chose CEO of ExxonMobil, Rex Tillerson, to be his Secretary of State pick. So guess what? He's going to advance oil interests and fossil fuel interests all over the world. So there you go.
Yeah,
now, Trump
just
himself,
a side note on this, Jeff,
Sure.
if I could. Just a side note. Like, I think all the stuff you mentioned, let's not forget the whole branding and PR and snake oil aspect of Trump here. He met with Leonardo DiCaprio. He met with Al Gore around the same time that he was appointing these people to those positions. So really, he took a photo op and he took an opportunity and he, kept the media cycle in his favor while then simultaneously appointing these horrible picks. So it was really just a PR grab. And as far as I'm concerned, Al Gore and Leonardo DiCaprio just kind of bought the snake oil.
Yeah, and look, so we kind of know the direction, or we pretty much know the direction that the Trump administration is going to take on energy and on energy policy. Now, the reason that I bring this up is some of the people who are speaking for Donald Trump. Now, recently, Trump transition team member Anthony Scaramucci went on CNN's New Day to talk about climate change. And to be honest, I actually give Chris Cuomo a little bit of credit for at least trying to push back on this. And why don't I just show you the video first and we'll break it down.
So, why do you want the names? Those who worked on global warming at the Department of Energy. Is this a purge?
No, I don't think so at all. I think this is an intellectual curiosity expedition. We're really trying to come up with the best solutions for the American people and the best solutions for the world. And when you think about Department of Energy or the EPA, I think what we're thinking about is energy independence for the United States, clean air and clean water, which the president-elect has repeatedly said throughout the campaign and during the transition. And the most important thing that I want the American people to focus on is that we can generate a tremendous amount of energy revenues as a result of new taxes coming off of the energy that's underneath the ground here in the United States.
All right, so look right there. We want clean air, clean water, but we want energy independence. Red flag right there. Energy independence, it's not a thing, it's a buzzword. That's all it is. See, like, and here's the reason why America doesn't own that oil. Actually, the multinational oil companies do.
Yeah,
all
and they're not keeping it domestic.
Exactly. All that energy, all energy independent actually means to them is, hey, let's eliminate regulations on fossil fuel. Look, let's drill everywhere. Let's drill in Anwar. Let's drill in the Arctic. Let's drill in your backyard. Let's use eminent domain, which Donald Trump is actually very famous for using in order to build his golf courses and different properties. So that's what energy independence means to them, is we're independent to do anything we want. I don't know if I've really put that all that well, but that's essentially the gist of it. They want to be able to do whatever the hell they want in order to get that oil without government interference, without government regulation. So if you really wanted energy independence, by the way, you would nationalize the oil industries and the fossil fuel industries.
And
Now,
you would invest more in renewable sources.
And look, as soon as I said nationalize the oil companies, half of your heads exploded. I can imagine. Okay, how dare you nationalize the oil companies, you Marxist communist pinko? I mean, we can't allow that. No. Not only do the oil industries, the companies control Congress to prevent us from being actually energy independent by, I don't know, being able to do solar, wind, and other renewable energies that would get us off fossil fuels from over in Iran or whatever. Not Iran, sorry, Saudi Arabia. We've also actually overthrown governments in order to make sure that they didn't nationalize their oil. That's where I talk about Iran. South America. I mean, look, we've overthrown different governments thanks to help with the CIA. You know, they're overthrowing these different governments in order to make sure that the cheap oil continues to flow. That's our history in the 20th century. That's what we have done. So this whole energy independence thing, no, it's a complete racket. It doesn't exist. Multinational corporations do not keep this domestically. What they do is that they drill this oil here, and we send it through all these different pipelines. It would have been sent through, for example, Dakota Access Pipeline, down to Texas, where it gets shipped out to the rest of the world and sold on the world market. That's it. That's our energy policy. And they're saying,
it's just padding the pockets of billionaires.
That's basically, and that's the whole deal. So I always get really frustrated when people talk about, energy independence. It's not a thing, dude. It doesn't exist. It's fairy dust and unicorns. Now, Cuomo is going to ask him some more questions. This is going to continue. Let's get to the next clip.
Well, you got different conversations. You have, do you accept the science of man's impact on the warming of the planet? And then you have, well, what policy considerations do you make in light of that science? That's one discussion. My first question, though, I'm not completely satisfied on yet, which is, I don't get that intellectual exercise to find out who worked on global warming. Why do you need to know who worked on global warming?
No, I think, look, I mean, I know that the current president believes that the human beings are affecting the climate. There are scientists that believe that that's not happening. I think that,
the overwhelming consensus in the scientific community is that man's actions have an impact on science. You have to correct that whenever it comes out. Go ahead.
Chris, there was an overwhelming science that the Earth was flat, and there was an overwhelming science that
you learn over time.
We were the center of the world. 100%. We get a lot of things wrong in the scientific community. You and I both know that. I'm not suggesting that we're not affecting the change. I honestly don't know. I'm not a scientist. If you're asking me for my opinion, it's probably a blend of people and what's going on in the you're not asking me for my opinion.
I'm not asking, and I'm not offering my own. I'm telling you that there is a consensus within the scientific community. When you say, I don't know, that means you're ignoring the consensus in the scientific community. I'm saying just be straight about it.
I got to give him some credit there.
Yeah,
he's like, that's not my opinion, man.
It's about time someone in the corporate media takes that stand.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we're not going to be neutral and pretend like there's not overwhelming peer-reviewed science that says, yes, climate change is a thing. Because they've been neutral for so long. It's about time that somebody in the corporate media says, objectively, yes, climate change is happening. There's overwhelming peer-reviewed scientific evidence. And it's totally happening. And then this guy goes on to make a comparison about the flat Earth, which of course is a brilliant comparison, right? I mean, Jeff, don't you remember learning in school when Pythagoras said, hey guys, I don't think the polar caps are melting. And then they found out he was right, or when Christopher Columbus sailed and he was like, hey guys, the polar caps aren't melting. Don't you remember learning that in school? No, because that's not what happened. They were thinking that the Earth was flat, and then later through exploration, they found out that it wasn't through a variety of explorations. And of course, we get our whitewashing historical version of it. And that's the difference here. What he just did was something that you can't really do, and it's really faux intellectual. He just compared a pseudoscience to a science. Where did climate change come from? It came from science. It came from exploration. It came through hypotheses that were tested over and over again. It comes from peer-reviewed evidence and research. Where did the theory that the Earth is flat came from? It came from people that didn't have the know-how or the technology, so they just kind of reached their own conclusions based on the limited information that they had. And at the time, they couldn't prove it or disprove it, which meant it was a pseudoscience. Couldn't be proven or disproven. Science is based on evidence. Pseudoscience is based on belief or faith or something like that. You can't pit a science against a pseudoscience or pit them alongside each other because they are not really comparable. But that's what this guy did, and it's a cop-out. It's a faux intellectual cop-out.
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it that time on that. Now, where does this faux cop-out come from? Well, look, a lot of climate
The
deniers-
right.
Yeah, well, not just that.
Sorry.
I mean, yes, of course, it comes from fossil
I mean, really,
fuel
that's where it
interests.
comes from.
It comes from fossil fuel interests, and right now they're
Yeah.
trying to use cherry-picked data and models from think tanks that have been funded by large fossil fuel interests. And see, that's what they're doing. I mean, look, you want to talk about the money, right? See, they believe that there's this big conspiracy going on. That, people like George Soros and Al Gore and all these different people are pouring all this money to try to perpetuate the hoax of climate change. You want to talk about the actual money, look at the
Yeah, and all
billions
those
of dollars.
protesters in Dakota that got those huge salaries, remember?
Right. They made some bank, Look, you got to look at the billions of dollars that are being poured into these fossil fuel allied think tanks to actually pay scientists. Now you got to wonder, I wonder who they would be in favor of. Now for us, we don't actually want to believe that climate change is real. We don't want climate change to be real. We want it to be not real. Because that means that, that we're okay, that things aren't going to be fucked up in the near future. That Florida's not going to be underwater. We want to not believe. But unfortunately, the scientific evidence shows otherwise.
Well, wait a second. I mean, if everybody in Florida gets out in time, I don't know. I mean, that means Florida wouldn't play a role in elections anymore. I might be kind of okay with that.
That's why you're kind of a dick.
Just kidding.
I know. But see, as I said, they think that there's this big conspiracy theory of elite, this elite cabal of people funding scientists to put out propaganda. And actually, when it comes to that, they're kind of right. Except that they're just mixed up on who's funding what.
Yeah, it's the oil
is a
companies that are
conspiracy.
doing that.
Right, it is a conspiracy. There is an elite that's paying people off to spew out junk science. And it's funded by the giant multinational fossil fuel corporations who are the richest corporations in the world.
Well, and that's why these oil companies put so much advertising dollars into the corporate media. They're not spending those advertising dollars because they need to advertise their product. They're spending those advertising dollars so that the media won't publish many stories that conflict with their narrative. And it's working. The corporate media was pretty much silent on Dakota Access Pipeline unless they were trying to make the protesters look bad. It's working. And you know what else they do? Through a sponsored content system that our corporate media passively lets happen, they will, any environmental stories that are there, they'll place their perspective, which is basically just a PR piece from the oil and gas companies, next to the article, which is paid to be there. It's not journalism at all, but there's only a small disclaimer telling the reader that, and then they'll be like, oh, there's this alternative viewpoint. I'm going to click that. Like, no, that's fluff propaganda to try try to diminish the dangers that we're facing environmentally. I mean, even the EPA just revealed, like, they were like, hey, fracking is for sure bad. We've caught up to everybody else.
Oh, finally.
Fracking is for sure totally bad. Next, we're going to look into Walmart. Maybe they're kind of dicks. We don't know.
They could be. I mean, wait, are you saying that these the Waltons are not a stand-up family? Are you impugning their record?
Yes. Yeah, I'm on the record saying that.
Aspersions on their asparagus?
I've performed in Jackson Hole, Wyoming before, and I might even do it again, and I am on the record saying that they're not a decent family. Not a fan of Dick Cheney either. Not a fan of Dick Cheney either. Another Jackson Hole resident. I am, however, a big fan of Harrison Ford. I would...
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You know what? I concur with that.
It's like a real life Indiana Jones, man. It's Harrison Ford and a bunch of villains living in this like town.
Yeah. Anyway, back to this whole thing. Now look, ExxonMobil. Now I mentioned Rex Tillerson. Now Donald Trump's pick to be Secretary of State. It's going to spread, of course, the use of oil, fossil fuels around the globe, even more. So here's what's interesting about ExxonMobil, and here's what's interesting about and how it ties into climate science. Now, even ExxonMobil's own scientists that were working for them, right, they could not deny the data. They did these studies. Exxon was, back in the 80s especially, did a lot of studies on climate change, on the effects of carbon. They came to the conclusion that, holy shit, what we're doing, we put too much carbon in the atmosphere, we're going to warm up the planet. Now, of course, the CEOs and the executives, they basically were just like, fuck that.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's bad for our profits. We're not going to let that get out. But these scientists, they know they were getting paid by these fossil fuel companies, by ExxonMobil, and even they found the data completely undeniable and compelling that we are causing, we're not causing okay, so it gets a little complicated here, but we are contributing greatly to climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, yes, the conservatives, they throw out these oh no, there's dips and there's troughs and whatever, and there are the natural cycles of the world. Yes, there are. The thing is that when you start to artificially influence those cycles, you can cause them to get out of whack. And that's what we're doing when we're putting more carbon in the atmosphere. Yes, some carbon should be there. We do need carbon because of its heat trapping properties. That's why carbon is actually good for the environment in specific amounts. It's bad when you put too much, because then you trap too much heat. That is the problem. That's why we should, maybe limit our carbon emissions a little bit. Mm-hmm. Or maybe a lot. It's pretty easy. I mean, this is not hard stuff.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily easy, but I mean,
the principle is pretty simple. You put more greenhouse gases that trap heat into the atmosphere, it's going to trap more heat. Things will get warmer.
Right.
Fairly simple.
Right.
It's not, yes, it's not, it is complicated, but it's also not. But the point is that we're continuing to put more carbon in the atmosphere. And there are people out there that are denying this, that are denying that this is a bad thing. When you put too much, you can have too much of a good thing, okay? You can have too much of a good thing, and you can have too much of anything, and it can cause you a problem. And that's what we're doing right now. We've got too much carbon, too much methane, too much of these greenhouse gases being put into the atmosphere right now, and it's going to cause a lot of problems.
Right. Well, and we're essentially, by definition, I mean, Bill Hicks said it best. We're a virus with shoes. I mean, that is definitionally what we are. So we have an obligation to have stewardship towards the environment.
Yes.
And because of special corporate interests, we're really shitting all over that obligation. So I mean the whole like climate deniers and the quote data that they throw at it is just such small minor debt. Well, we don't have our records only go back so far. So it's like, well, once again, you're getting into like the realm of, well, we can't like prove or disprove how cycles have gone specifically because it only goes back so far. But we can prove that our interactions here are causing problems. We can prove that. There's peer-reviewed evidence and science that says that, yes, that is going on. So let's do something about that. Because the points you're making are pretty much null and moot. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and look, on the political side, because this really, it's not a science problem. This is a political problem, okay? And this, ironically, I did a poll. A Republican polling agency polled Trump supporters and asked them, hey, do you believe in climate change? Do you believe we should do something about it? A majority of them said, yeah, of course, we need to do something about it. The politics from the right side, from the Republicans, are not on the side of a majority of the American people, even their own voters.
See, I even take issue, and maybe this is getting like too nitpicky here, but I even take issue with framing it that way. Do you believe in climate change?
Oh no,
it's
I totally
not something
get that.
you even no, and I'm not pointing that at you. I'm just speaking more general. Like you can't you can believe in a supreme being or not. Because that can't be proven or disproven, at least as of right now. We can't prove or disprove that. But climate change, it's either you acknowledge and accept the data or you do not. And I think it needs to be framed more in that context. And it's like, do you accept the scientific community, a community that has peer-reviewed evidence and research and evolving hypotheses that have been tested time and time again and continue on this path, continue to be tested and challenged. And if there was ever overwhelming evidence that disproves some of this stuff, it would evolve. Do you accept that or reject it? And if you reject it, why?
Right.
What do you have to point to that is reason for rejecting that?
Well, obviously.
And if the answer is, well, what this ExxonMobil said, well, gee, they might have a little bit of conflict of interest 101, buddy. So I don't know.
Yeah, but Al Gore is going to tax you more. That's what it is. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent, non-corporate media, go to our Patreon page and become a patron. Patreon.com/TYTNation.